Welcome back, Poggers, to another episode of the Pog State. We've finally made it to Season 2 of 2022. Summer is here. And, of course, this is after Week 1. We are just before the final day of Week 1, but this is right on the cusp of Week 2. Very, very exciting stuff. I'm Atlas, and with me, I have all of the LCK boys. Valdes right here, Chronicler and Wolf over there. Chronicler looking absolutely fantastic with a mushroom on his head. Absolutely love it. You can get that from the LCK store, although we're not doing an ad here just yet today.
#ad.
In this episode, we're going to mostly talk about the meta, things like this. Of course, it's the durability patch, and things have definitely changed. I would say slowed down just a little bit. But before that, before we get into all of the new things, we have to talk about the old. We have to talk about, I guess here in the LCK, it's a bit of a sad topic, but MSI 2022. Gentlemen, Valdes, how did you feel about the final?
Well, obviously blue side is overpowered, and Gwen should be removed from the game. That's all I have to say. Robbed from the LCK, obviously. All plans by Riot, and I think this is a really big deal.
Oh my god. Okay.
Not actually, but...
I guess we have to cut the whole show. Gentlemen, do you have any additions?
Don't silence him.
So on a more serious note, I think T1 had some pretty big warning signs throughout even the group stage, the Rumble stage. Their team fighting didn't look as crisp as RNG. I hated to be the LCK caster to do it, but my prediction was RNG was going to win the final. I thought it was going to be 3-1. It was closer than I expected, but... Blue side was pretty strong in that draft, but also T1, I think they choked in Game 5 pretty significantly, and there's still opportunities at Worlds. T1 can win back-to-back seasons of LCK. I think the future is still bright. But yeah, RNG was a better team at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd agree. I really like Wolf's point because a lot of people did focus on the drafts because it's the easy thing to talk about, and T1's draft have at time been pretty sus. But there's two parts of me that kind of feel like the core issue was just the overall performance of the teams. One was that RNG also tried to play more conservative, more standard drafts on red side. That also didn't work. And then Carrier dying level 1 on Yuumi and Faker getting boomed 3 times in lane with Wei just running circles around basically the entirety of T1 were also really, really big. Clutch factor of the LPL just too much, I think, for T1 at that stage to handle. Yeah, as you mentioned, also their Rumble stage was, especially compared to expectations, not great. I do think expectations were way too high because it's T1 and because of the split that they had. And LCK watchers that actually watch every T1 game knew, like, they dropped games to, like, Hanwha Life. And they had issues. It was one game for the third time in a row. And that does actually,
that's the hurtful one.
That just lose. If we lose Worlds, just let it be a 3-0, please. Don't put. I'm not lying. Don't put me through this again. Like, I can't take it a 4th time.
Yeah.
Can I give a real...
Yeah, you
might actually have to, because G-Sun may have just
we
completely cut out.
We might just cut out the hard take. Which was obviously a joke.
Sarcasm, everyone.
It was obviously a joke. Wolf points 2 guns at you.
But yeah, I think that RNG did a really good job of just playing really solid League of Legends in a macro sense, and I think T1 got a lot of wins in the LCK by just overpowering their opponents and just being super aggressive and just being the better team, whereas RNG were like, no, we're the same level as you, and we're just going to play standard League of Legends better, and they did. You know, I think, just to put it extremely simply, like, I don't think all the draft and the crazy stuff, like, yeah, it does play a part in it, but I think that RNG, again, we're just a better team for 5 games, and that's why we do 5-game series.
The crowd also, I think, played some part in T1. Like, if you're winning a dominant series and you're the only team on stage, I think the crowd is, like, such an amazing boon for you. Every time you just walk off the stage to, like, take a break and talk to your coaching staff between games, like, you know, the crowd's chanting for you and stuff. But, like, when you're trading games back and forth and you're also the only team on stage, I think the crowd adds this extra pressure, like, oh, you guys might drop the ball here. Like, oh, we're going to a game 5. Like, it felt like maybe we were going to win the series, but now it's 50-50 on this final game and you don't have blue side. And it's one of the most aggressive fan bases, and T1 is the most popular team. Like, there's so many aspects of that. Losing game 5, like you said, 3 times in a row, this time in front of the Korean crowd. First time for Faker playing in Korea for an international event. just a big tragedy for our region overall. But look, we only sent one team. They only sent one team. Does it mean anything for region versus region? Only time will tell.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think that not banning Gwen still makes me upset. I still haven't gotten over it. But I think talking about what Brendan said just a little bit more, because I think that you touched on something that is fundamental for how T1 were playing throughout all of spring, which was pick to win lane, and that will win you the game every single time. And it did. They were undefeated, right? Like, this is a team that was very, very good at ignoring team composition almost entirely, just having pressure in every single lane, and then they have way more gold, and then they win. But I think you need to have some team cohesion when you're against a team like RNG, especially against RNG in spring, which is the most terrifying team in the world in spring. Right?
And this is where the depth of the LPL really comes in, because top esports, it's not the same team, but there's a lot of similarities to be drawn where top esports early game is just monstrous, and RNG still finessed them in finals as well, right? So they were pretty familiar with the play style, and then they just played the mid game so well.
It's so similar to MSI last year, where RNG had to like fight super hard to get their MSI spot versus Damwon, who extremely dominated, was never tested. T1, more extreme version, not only were they not tested, they didn't drop a single series throughout the season. So yeah, I think
still
that really
domestically
helps.
undefeated, by the way. Unless they lose to KT today,
Could
which
happen.
we don't know. Scrimbucks say that KT are not that bad, but they didn't win this week so far, so it's not looking fantastic for them. All right, that's enough. We don't need to beat a dead horse or just talk more about a sad topic, which is MSI 2022. Instead, let's talk about summer, and let's get some overreactions, gentlemen. Week 1 is basically done and dusted for you guys at home. It absolutely is done. We've still got one more day to go. However, we'll try and ignore that, and we will just give our takes of the week. Valdes, starting with you, what's your biggest overreaction for week 1?
I think that Riot needs to buff objectives because they nerfed champions, and now all the objectives fail to end the game. Unless you're like T1, who totally overpowers even when they're stumbling over themselves, or you're Liv Sandbox, who look way overpowered, at least in their first match, right? 3 Elders is like too much. I think 2 Barons, 3 Elders, like we don't need that to end the game. I think that the team fights have gotten pretty interesting. I think it's more interesting overall. But I think overall the game needs some more tuning, and I kind of like the way that Chronicler put it at the beginning of our cast, where it was like they put in a preseason patch in the middle of the year, and good luck. And we need some big tunes, more tuning.
They need to change Summer's Rift's music. That's what Valdes is saying.
We need more DJ Sona.
Which big tunes are you looking for? What do we have the rights
Seraphine's busted, by
They
the way.
need to tune up the games.
I just want to reiterate
She has
that.
the best tunes.
Seraphine's
Yep.
busted. She has great music. Pick her, please.
Any KDA
Yeah.
skin is just completely overtuned, one could say. All right.
We need
Chronicler-
big changes.
Yeah. We
'Cause
need big
right now
changes. Do you
it's-
agree?
it's not
What's
it.
your
No,
overreaction?
I love this meta. My overreaction is this meta is the best. Because so we sacrificed the first 10 minutes, and then we're
20
LCK.
minutes.
Well, I mean 15 if the teams are. I feel like
I'm
teams
feeling
start.
20. I'm feeling
No,
20.
no, no,
I'm
no, no,
feeling
no.
20.
I think 20 is a good middle ground.
Yeah, it's in the middle. But depending on the teams that are playing, if it's Fred or Brian at 10 minutes, if it's Liv Sandbox, take 5 minutes away. And I do actually agree, if we're talking 100% serious, that there needs to be more fine-tuning. But the way the team fights play out now is more interesting than it has been in 3 years. Ever since like Damwon 2020, every single international tournament to me feels decided by someone gets the teams that is better at getting like really decisive picks and really decisive playmaking just wins. It used to be Damwon. RNG did the same thing. We've seen against Damwon in 2021. We've seen EDG do it. We've now seen RNG do basically like I'm so done with matches being decided off of a single pick at the start of a team fight. And I do actually think that once we get to the team fight stage, the fights are way better. But yeah, objectives need some buffing. There probably needs to be more of an incentive to actually fight early game. You don't want the comps to only be good. But between the team fights and the diversity that we're actually seeing in terms of compositions and drafts, I do think that this has the potential to be the best meta in like 3 years. It's not right now. It's way too slow. And as you pointed out, 2 Barons and 3 Elders is definitely not what you want for the health of the game. But in terms of champions diversity, jungle notwithstanding, and in terms of team fighting, I think the game looks incredible. Also, Live Sandbox are definitely not going to disappoint me this season.
All right, Wolf, take it away.
So I
Chronicler.
tend to agree with everything Chronicler just said about the meta. I think it could end up being the best meta we've had in several years, and I'm so glad that we do not have a meta that's decided by, somebody died right before Rift Herald was taken at 8 minutes into the game, and then the next 17 minutes of the game are worthless, and that's just how it goes. Because we had a lot of that, especially with our top teams. In terms of, I don't want to talk about the meta as much as they did. I want to talk about teams for my overreactions. My first crazy overreaction is that both T1 and Dom1 look much weaker than I expected in week 1. T1 will play later today, so we'll see how that goes. Dom1 in their first series also not looking very clean, as much as we expect from them normally. Nuguri still has some growing to do. We'll talk about more about that later. But right now, I feel like this is looking very good for Genji. This could be Genji's season. That's one of my overreactions from week 1. And then my second one is I put Frederick Brown pretty high on a pedestal. I put him maybe this could be the top 4. Cancel it, cancel everything. They didn't play any of their spring strengths. They didn't play a slow-based game. They played an aggressive comp very slowly, which didn't work for them. They also played the quirky comp very poorly as well when they were playing against DRX in that second game. I'm removing all of the Frederick Brion hype until they convince me otherwise. Because going into the season, I think on paper, looks like this team was going to have a great meta for their playstyle. Then they played the opposite of their playstyle. And then when they played their old playstyle even once out of the 4 games, they didn't look good at that either. So really just I'm canceling all the Frederick Brown hype, pumping the brakes on the hype train.
Yeah, well, my overreaction is that DRX is the best team in the world. They will win Worlds. It is done. It's dusted. Kingen is the greatest top laner to ever play the game. Zeka is just by far the best mid laner that I've ever seen in the entire universe. And I wasn't expecting their solo lanes to be good because they have, by a country mile, the greatest bottom lane to ever exist. That was already proven last season. And they have Pioshik, who's... he played Kindred that one time, and it was really, really fun.
His ceremonies have by far been the best.
He has definitely had the best ceremonies in all of the LCK. In all seriousness, I actually think that DRX have been my biggest surprise for the first week. They were much stronger coming into this week than I think a lot of teams that I had some high hopes for. Biggest disappointment being, of course, Nongshim Red Force, who just are just not good.
Not again.
They just haven't figured it out. I thought after some time they'd get these huge names that are very good. Canna did have that one game that was good.
They also...
We're on overreactions.
Yeah, we are on overreactions. Because the one caveat is they played T1 and DRX. So unlike last split, I'm not completely giving up on Nongshim, but I really want.
Oh no, I'm done. Good. I'm done with Nongshim.
Yeah, you've given up.
It's over. I also another overreaction is that Prince is the best returning player. Nuguri, not interested. Prince though, unbelievable. Just picked up where he left off. Him and Effort were absolutely fantastic towards the end of last year, and he is just going from strength to strength. He left Effort. Effort sort of fell off a cliff, but Prince has just absorbed all of his power, all of his skill, all of his talent, and is now bringing it forward on Live Sandbox and looking really fantastic. They might lose catastrophically to Dom1, which you guys have already seen. I look a little bit silly, perhaps in this particular moment. However, right now, as we sit, I'm feeling pretty good about Live Sandbox as well.
Yeah, I think they've actually got a pretty decent shot against Dom1, if we're talking about overreactions, at the beginning of the week, I was like, no way, Dom1 2-0, absolutely. But now I'm like, I don't know, maybe Live Sandbox 2-1. I think Dom1 Kia is definitely the stronger team, but Live Sandbox started off really strong.
It's a close 2-0 for Dom1, I think. I think it's a close 2-0 for Dom1.
Don't trust them.
That's close 2-0. That's kind of like what happened against Fred Brion, though, and I feel like Live Sandbox are about 7 miles ahead of where Fred Brion are right now. So
maybe more than 7 miles.
Yeah, that might be a couple less. Yeah.
I think it'll be at least a 2-1.
Do have a debuff. They
I think it'll be at least a 2-1
against Predator as well. That could be the case. The one thing that I want to overreact about Sandbox, but I just can't do it because I've been hurt by them so many times. But both Croco NKL, and obviously Prince, they all look great. And like that's enough for a team to win a lot. So
Kyle
please
had
keep it going.
Probably one of his best series
It was.
in their
since,
last one.
Since winning Challengers finals, that was the best I've seen.
Alternatively, Hoyt had one of his worst at the same time. So.
And look, to be perfectly honest, like the matchup was not necessarily something that is a great showcase for what Live Sandbox necessarily could look like against some of our better teams. And they are going to be against Damwon later on today. For you guys, it's already happened, so you can just put down in the comments how stupid we are after this particular moment. Let's broaden things, though. Let's talk about what the LCK meta looks like, because I think there have been a lot of shakeups as far as how a lot of the teams are starting to pick different champions, things like this. We've got a slight expansion of the top lane pool, assuming that Gwen is going to be banned every game, which she has been. The jungle's looking a little bit stale, but the bottom lane, we're getting lots and lots of different picks, lots of cool support options. The center compositions are looking really cool, but the mid lane is so boring. It is just the same champions over and over again, and the same matchups that we've been seeing for the last 4 years. Azir Corki, the Victor Oriana. It's like all we're getting with some like Ari thrown in there, and it's otherwise just the same.
It is very boring in terms of champions. I think the ones that we are seeing, we're going to be seeing a lot more. Like Victor is back, and he's like one of the weaker ones. You don't even feel excited about him because he's usually low impact in these games. But I think the mid role has been extremely pivotal and extremely important. So as boring as it is, I think it's also very exciting because it's a very high skill expression meta for the mid laners. Like, yes, Quirky Rockets doesn't sound like that cool and that hype, but actually you could see a huge difference between how Lava played it yesterday and how Chovy played it, for example, and how successful he was. And also Azir is such a fun champion in a meta like this because he's Burn Azir. Like, he actually uses his ult defensively now, not as an engaged tool, and he's kind of a AP carry. Like, he's just sitting at the back, like, doing slow damage and peeling for his AD carry. And it's a very different version of the Azir quirky meta than what we saw before. So I like that evolution. And it's fun to see, like, how when you put the mid pick down, like, that's usually what defines your draft. Like, okay, I picked Ahri, so we have to play pick. Okay, I picked Azir, so we have to play slow. I picked Victor, so we're doomed. We lost the draft.
We picked Victor, so our archetype is lose the game. That's what we're doing.
To be fair, that was...
I mean, that's how it was.
That
like,
was
we're
Kara's
going to try
playing.
to scale.
That was Kara's playing against Chovy, who looks like a god.
But also, like, the
I think-
Victor Azir matchup is so sad.
Yeah, it is very sad, and also, the player matchup was also kind of sad in that matchup. I think
the team as well.
Yeah, the team matchup was really unfair.
Oh,
let's
God.
say. I think that the fun thing about a big patch like this is that there's LCK, unfortunately, is like usually very slow to change. So that's why I think that week one is going to look exactly the same all the way through. We're going to see the same picks. It's going to be like whatever. We saw like Knight playing Brand and like all these crazy picks in other regions. I think that LCK will eventually jump on that train. But we need time because we're the LCK. But like the fun thing about a huge change like this in a meta, because of a big patch, is that we will eventually get like really fun new changes. It's just that the players need time to figure it out and actually like figure out what is the new strong pick against like the Sejuani top. How can we really punish that? How can we really punish the Azir? Maybe like Kiana comes back. Probably not because of the durability patch, but like maybe some other kind of control mage, takes the reins.
Yeah, I really like that take. I think there's already we're seeing some diversity crop up. The Swain has been played. We've seen things like the Kill getting banned, so we know they're kind of at the fringes. But the LCK, as Valdes pointed out, is not only resistant to change, but also when we in the LCK identify, it's like the copy pasta, that it is a slow meta, we all in on that. And that's why like Live Sandbox existing is good. That's why T1 hopefully still playing to a certain extent aggressive is good, because we need teams to keep our teams honest, because we all know that every LCK mid laner loves to go for the Azir Corki and the Ornn against Cyan, and then, which again, pick Cho'Gath, stop picking Cyan, please, is something that can definitely work. I also think that hopefully in a few weeks we'll see Seraphine, we'll see Udyr, we'll see Karthus, we'll see
Sona, maybe. I hope. Like, I think Sona could be good too.
Yeah, there's just a lot of picks that are extremely strong even in the current meta within the...
But now healing got nerfed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Senna's healing seems pretty good.
I was about to
Senna's healing
say,
seems pretty all right.
I do actually think that the Corki, specifically Corki, because we were very avid Corki haters, not as bad because of both. A lot of comps have built-in sustain,
I
and the
actually
durability.
liked Corki last
It
night.
feels a lot more fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
the durability patch has actually helped so that you lose you still lose half your health bar, but it's not doomed. And that to me is the core. Is how are we going to see that play out? And in addition to that, Gen G has shown us that, unlike T1, if you are better, you can still end games early. And that was, of course, like Gen G, Humble Life is as big as a gap as we're going to get. Nongshim did push back a little bit more. But the refinement that we're going to see, hopefully, over the next few weeks is just not there for week 1 at all. I also think T1's going to take it very easy, as they should, for the first month.
Yeah, I think so too.
And overall, yeah, I actually really liked Wolf's take earlier. Gen G seems to be all-round the strongest team right now, which is fine. Domo probably needs time to adjust. T1 needs time to take a break, and DRX is way better than expected. It's a pretty good start of summer.
Yeah. And it's DRX in the opening matches as well. I love the overreaction because we've seen this before, right?
So many times.
They go on these massive tears and it's like, whoa, this team's actually good. And then I don't know, the House of Cards in their back room falls down and they
Max.
lose all
I mean,
ability to do anything.
they started 0-3 last time. And then before
But they've had seasons in the past
have,
where it's
yeah.
and they went on that 6-match winning streak as well, and then it
Yeah.
got broken by losing the
You
Hanwha
know their
line.
next match is Humble Life Esports as well. I
Well,
mentioned it
yeah.
on the cast. I'm like, man, this is the perfect season to get hyped about DRX because their first 3 matches are Sim Bro and Humble Life Esports. So could be a very strong 3-0 start for them.
It definitely could, and then we could fall off a huge cliff, which is fantastic. I want to talk about some of the stats and what's actually happened as far as the difference between this particular week and some of the metas from the past, because there are some huge statistical anomalies that have cropped up here. Of course, the shortest game being that Gen G versus Harma Life game, which was just shy of 25 minutes, which felt like you didn't need to tell me the stat that it was the shortest game. You just knew.
Yeah,
'Cause
Brendan and I were
every
I'm
other
pretty
game was
sure this is
40
the
minutes.
shortest one, but we don't have a stat for that because it's day 4.
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
sure, but yeah.
But the interesting part is that the longest game is 46 minutes, but the average game time is 37 minutes. It's every game is going 40 minutes, and then you have the Elder fight, and then it's over. It feels like every single game is very, very similar as far as that length is concerned, and it's an increase of 4 minutes on average.
Yeah, the shortest game we had this week, 23:43, is 3 minutes longer than the shortest game we had in playoffs, which, it's playoffs, so that's usually, there's a few one-sided games in there. And then the shortest game in regular season was 4 minutes shorter than that for spring season as well. So we'll see if we get any shorter ones because it's still early days, but that's pretty significant as well. I think that Gen G versus Hanwha Life, which is it's a pretty mismatched matchup for Hanwha, right? Arguably our best team potentially versus our worst team from last season, and they still can't get a sub 20 early on in the meta. I think it's going to be a slow one, you guys. I think we're going to have a lot of 40-minute Nexus explosions.
Very, very interesting, especially considering the average game duration when, the longest game last season was 56 minutes, whereas our longest game is now 46, right? And you'd think with an outlier like that, theoretically things could be longer. But no, it's just the vast majority are sitting 42 minutes.
We'll probably get more extremes as well as this play continues.
I'm a little bit worried about that as well. Let's talk about some of our returning players, though, because Nuguri and Prince, they've come back, and Moham's also been brought up. Otherwise,
Moham.
not too many changes. A lot of our teams really sticking to their guns, making sure that it's all about building synergy, things like this. We've already seen the benefits of that with the fact that T1 came into spring with the same roster and looked absolutely fantastic throughout the season. Now, potentially, could be a little bit more challenged by teams like DRX who have found some synergy, like Gen G who are starting to play through so many of their strengths far more than what we saw in the spring season, which is very, very cool. But Noguri's returning and Prince has returned. And let's talk about Nuguri first. We've only seen one match so far, and I'm a bit lukewarm on how the debut has been thus far.
I think, to be honest, the meta kind of hurts him a little bit. Nuguri in the past was known for winning lane, being very aggressive, playing stuff like Kennen if he wasn't, and like pulling off insane like flanks and making huge plays. But I think he played Sejuani and Gnar.
Yeah.
So and the Gnar game, he wasn't even like, I think he wasn't even like necessarily needed, or like he didn't need to do too much, and his team was still winning. So I think we still need more time on Nuguri to really make a big statement on whether or not he's like at the same form or whatever, because as of right now, I think the meta is really going to affect the way that he plays.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's not a strong meta for him right now. We'll see if that changes, because there are a lot of champions in the top lane that we haven't seen punish champs like Gangplank. We usually see this Gangplank is banned if the draft is strong for Gangplank, but we haven't seen him be able to play an aggressive top lane, potentially even assassin, into the Gangplank, try to punish it old school ways. Because we're the LCK and we're like, no, well, if they're scaling, we just have to scale harder. That's like our approach so far. Overall, like, I do think it's too early to tell, but it was kind of disappointing because it felt like in a matchup like that as well, where Damwon was favored, Nuguri was supposed to come out and just trash on Kingen and pop off. And or sorry, it was not Kingen. Who was it they played
It was
against?
Morgan.
Morgan, that's right. Yeah, it felt like it was supposed to just come in and like kind of dump on him a little bit, but it wasn't actually the case. Like, even in the laning phase, I feel like Morgan had the better end of it most of the time. So, still, he was on a break. There's a lot of time that he needs to come back in, but I was ready for, like, this is it. He's back, like, the top lane king. It's over. Like, Rascal, like, sorry, man, you're going to have to give your chair back over. Keen, you're going to have to give your chair back over. You know, we have a few strong top laners, but Nuguri felt like he was going to come in and be like, nope, this is my top lane now, and everyone's going to be talking about me. In one best of three, not so much.
Yeah, and the current meta doesn't, you can, but it doesn't necessarily incentivize spending a lot of draft resources towards your top side. Based on what we've seen thus far, very often it's Sejuani, Gangplank, Gnar. Gangplank is the only one of those where you like, and Gnar has moments where you can carry, but it's very dependent on what is your team comp, what's the opponent's C comp. It's not like a foolproof, I can 1v9 on this like picks like Kennen. But, you know, Klepto's kind of back because First Strike exists. So at some point he'll probably start just going First Strike Vladimir and First Strike First Strike Kill, yeah.
First Strike Kill,
and
that's
then
the dream.
if the meta, you know, actually has space for that, we've seen so many times that teams with a lot of carries actually have trouble, unless they're like T1 did last split, like just winning everywhere all of the time, because there's a finite number of resources on the map. And when you're playing with arguably still the best jungler in the LCK, obviously with Peanut having a really great week one, and Owner also playing and matching or outpacing Canyon last time around, it's not necessarily given, but given Canyon's history, like I'd always expect him to, especially in summer, bounce back. And then you have a bot lane that wants resources as well in Dogdom, and then you have Showmaker. So like, I think it really is going to depend on how this new iteration of Damwon plays out. There is no more Ghost that you can say, good luck, you're not getting anything, and we can actually play towards that top side. We'll see. I think Nuguri will probably settle in as like a top 3 top laner. I think the only top laner right now that looks outside of King and who had really good Ornn games is just Zeus, and that's because I'd argue he's just the best player in the league at the moment. And that's like, he just gaps people because he's so much better, not necessarily because top lane is although Fiora's good and it's been banned a couple of times, so maybe we'll go that direction at some point.
Yeah, Canna was thinking about it in their series against T1, but didn't actually go there. I kind of agree with the sentiment on Nuguri needing a bit of time to settle, and it might even be that he just looks great against he's up against Dove this afternoon. You guys have already seen it. And I guess let us know in the comments whether you think that after 2 matches that Nuguri is the guy for you. But let's talk about Prince, because this is a much more fun topic, because his debut game was absolutely amazing. I felt like Prince really took what was the biggest issue for Live Sandbox in the spring season, which was Ice and Envy looking completely absent. Like, I've never seen a more invisible bottom lane. When I think about Ice, what we saw there,
I literally think about that one time he had a triple kill on Aphelios where the team fight was already over, where he just ulted, and everyone was like, "Oh, Ice! He got a triple kill that one time!" Like, that's literally all I can even remember from his play.
Envy played more than him, but Samira those few times, and him looking okay on it in Challenger, but then not looking very good outside of it. But then Prince comes back and he's amazing.
Yeah, the step up from Challenger bot lanes to LCK bot lanes is a really steep one. And it's not only Prince, because Prince, as you're pointing out, looked great in terms of like champion diversity. Clearly, the team, obviously, if he gets the players as real, like I'd like to see that. But it feels like he is both very versatile, and he also made Kyle look so much better. Because that player was also not great on the previous, and it's always hard with bot lanes to kind of shine. Shout out to my boy Delight. I know you're really trying to make it work. I mean, it's not even as much and trash talk as it is just Delight praise. But Kael looked, again, also against an underperforming Hoyd, but did look so much more confident, a lot better, was constantly trying to make proactive plays. And that was, I think, augmented by Prince, who looked supremely confident against a bot lane that, sure, Hoyd's had his issues, but Teddy has looked really good in the games that we've seen him individually thus far.
Yeah.
So it's a really good sign.
I think an interesting part of the meta as well is that from week one, it feels like, somebody's got to like step up and make the play happen rather than just like it happening 5v5, right? We saw a lot of like big carry performances. We saw Zeka do a huge job on DRX. And also for Live Sandbox, it was like Croco, but then Prince was coming in and he was like, no, I'm going to be the carry. And that was really cool to see, like a guy coming in for the first series, back on his original team, and he's like, no, I'm the carry. I'm going to take over. I'm going to make the big plays. And Guangdong Freaks they did kind of like sit there and not control vision very well, and they weren't the greatest team on that day, but Croco was trying to carry, and then Prince came over the top like, no, I'm the guy you should look at.
The backup.
It was
the
really,
backup
really
was
cool
fantastic.
to see how he kind of like took the reins right from the get-go, and he's like, no, I'm the guy.
That
on Live
second
Sandbox,
game-
I am the carry.
That second game, Prince really, on his own, identified several times. I feel like even Dove was not on the same page as him often, where he was like, Dove's just side laning, and Prince is like, no, they don't have vision. I'm going to Killer Instinct, and we're going to kill this guy. And Prince would often use his Void Seeker from super far away and set up those kills in the side lanes repeatedly. And I think Prince is kind of playing like he has something to prove. And in that opening interview, he's like, yeah, I'm back. Like, I'm here to actually, like, finally realize my dream, basically, I think is what he said. And he has one more chance. He's back. He's playing like he really wants to prove something. He's playing extremely aggressively. He adds so much to the team, I think, because of that kind of X factor of, okay, don't forget about me. Like, I'm still here. I'm back, and I'm going to pop off. And it's a meta where a player like Prince is a very mechanically driven AD carry player, where some of his most famous Ezreal plays are like 1v3s using, like, he's arcane shifting into a brush to avoid vision, then actually hitting a few Qs and turning around. Like, he's the type of player who can pop off, and I think for Live Sandbox last season, they were just so depressed with, like, the transition for Dove into the top lane isn't going well. Closer was a really strong mid laner for T1, but, like, when he came to this team, he didn't look as good. I think you need, like, that hype player who's actually, like, in the right mindset, is pushing the team to new boundaries, and I think it changes the whole mindset of Live Sandbox.
And you add reliability as well to a team that really didn't have any, right? Because, like, Dove was losing a lot of lanes, their bottom lane never won a lane, and then Closer's like, well, I guess I have to be the only guy doing anything. And Croco's like, I'm making so many plays, guys. Where the hell are you? And like this, like it was the perfect example. Like when Croco goes in, Prince is always there to back him up. You imagine like Croco's like, holy crap, this feels so good. You know?
Also, shout out to my boy Dove. Only there to provide plasma stacks and anathemas chains on Sejuani every time.
That game was so beautiful, though, for Live Sandbox, because Dove also realized, like, okay, I don't even need to build a mythic. I'm just gonna sit in a side lane
and not int.
and not int. And that's when Prince was like, but while they try to kill you, which is impossible, I will punish them. That was one of those games where you could see like the wheels turning in the Live Sandbox comms, and they're like, okay, we're behind in this game. We lost control of the top lane. How do we win this? That was my favorite game of the week so far that we had, was them kind of figure out how to 2-0 it. Yeah,
I'm happy for my boy Croco. Yeah, I just want Croco to have a good time, and now the entire team looks reinvigorated, and I expect that they will, as they have done in the past, just draft dive or an aggressive type of team comp every single time. I don't care if they lose playing the way that they did this week. Like, I honestly, doesn't matter. As long as they keep playing this cohesively, they can lose to better teams that like match the dive or read it better. That's fine. Just keep this going.
Yep.
It's really, really fun to see.
So speaking of, your favorites, that series, of course, was absolutely fantastic. But who was your favorite player? Who do you think that has performed the best based on expectation? And I think just to make it a little bit interesting here, it's more about who has made the biggest change from the spring season
I like
moving into the summer season.
I
So
wanna-
that you don't just say Zeus again.
No!
I'm sick of hearing it. All right, it's happened over and over
I
again.
know exactly
Yes,
what I'm gonna pick.
He's amazing, right? But we know he's amazing. Let's talk about players that we're excited for as far as like their performance moving into summer. Obviously, mine is a tie between Zeka and Kingen. Wolf, who's yours?
Mine was Zeka. Kingen had his moments last season, and he had some great, fantastic moments, especially his Ornn play. But Zeka played a wide variety of champions, including the Akali this week. He looked great on every champion he played. I feel like he had very few weak moments. His Azir was great. His Corki was fantastic. I think Zeka has shown so much versatility in a meta where, again, the mid lane usually defines the playstyle you're playing. And even though sometimes the AD carry defines like how you team fight later on, like when you pick your mid laner, you're like, this is how we're going to play. We're playing around this. And he showed so much versatility. He showed so much consistency because last season he was like lukewarm at best, basically. At best, we were like, okay, he had a few good moments in the team fight, but his laning phase was terrible. Okay, he played Akali like 3 times, and those were great games, but he's like kind of an Akali one trick. No, not this time, not so far. I think for me, in terms of improvement and how well he showcased a wide versatility, it's Zeka 100% for me.
I gotta go with the nut. It's Peanut. Now he did play against Cuz and Onfleek, which Onfleek is probably the best part of Homo Life. So if you take him out, then besides Karis, then nothing happens.
And he was absolutely taken out.
Oh yeah, no,
by
he was. Yeah, I'm not gonna
forcibly
go into
removed from.
It was
ballpark,
bad.
yeah.
It was bad. Yeah. And then it's only week 1, so it's a little hard. But Peanut to me has very often just kind of been there with Genji, and if we get a Peanut that actually pushes the way that he should be able to do, provided he has borrowing topside. Sorry, Doran, you are not looking great. Arguably some of the best. Chovy would be the best laner, I'd say. I think Ruler and Lahans still look incredible, and I expect that to continue throughout the split because there's no reason to think that that's gonna change because they have been, and I think it's the durability patch. You know, maybe we do actually put more prior on Enchantress as we should, and it's an Artem meta, and Ruler is still there. No, it's Peanut. I thought it was way too passive very often in the previous split, and aggressive Peanut should be good things for Genji. So I'll give him a shout. It's only week 1, but if you can continue that should be great.
Yeah. Well, I am going to go outside the rule first.
Okay.
I want to shout out Chovy. I think that he is, he went up against KT and up against Homo Life. So it's a, easy start for him relatively. But I think the fact that if you give him Azir, you lose is kind of ridiculous. And Chovy's been great in other metas. Like everybody remembers, what was it, over 100 KDA on Zoe meta, right? Where he just was like, oh, well, you can't give him this champion, and if you do, he's just never going to die. I think that kind of meta is back with the way we're doing it, right? He just gets to focus on his lane and never die and just always get leads every single time because he doesn't have to fight over the Rift Herald and he doesn't have to fight over early fights and he can just do whatever he wants for 20 minutes and get ahead and then carry. I think this is a perfect meta for Chovy, and he looked outstanding in the first week. I think Zeus was another big outstander along these lines. In terms of most improved, I think also would have to go kind of on the kind of what you guys said. I think those two were the biggest improvements, right? I think Zeka and Peanut were the big obvious ones that kind of stood out. I don't really have anyone else that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, you're like linked with me. Like Chovy was who I was gonna pick until Max changed it to improve, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
well.
I know. Like, why does Valdes get to go back on the rule? I want to talk about Zeus.
Yeah, well, I mean, he took the initiative. He took the initiative, and I will allow it this time around. I actually think that talking about those in conjunction, though, with the way Peanut played around Chovy continuing to be amazing, I think made me far more excited for what Genji is going to be capable of this season. Because we didn't see it in spring, right? We saw, like you say, it was the same Peanut. It was like Peanut, like plug and played from, his time on LGD and things like this, which is him just doing what he wants, getting ahead, then being good.
It was reminiscent of when Showmaker had a lot of prio lanes with his Lucian and Canyon in that jungle mid duo for Dom 1 Key, especially in 2021 spring. really felt like, okay, Chovy's got control of this lane, and so Peanut's just going to go off the same way Canyon has in the past.
And they do it like in a way that actually augments one another, right? And the way Peanut was playing around that immense amount of pressure that Chovy was putting on in mid was like extraordinarily impressive. It was fantastic. But I'm glad that I changed up what you had to say, because I think that Zeka really deserves the shout out. I think Kingen as well. It was mainly because I knew what Kingen was capable of, right? Moving into spring, and he was so disappointing. He was just not able to really do anything. I think Pyosik fell on his face last season. I don't think that there is any real other way of saying it. He
Agreed.
looked pretty absent, but he looks fine now. But I just think that with the overall level up and the cohesiveness that has been built by DRX, if more of our teams can manage to do that, that's what's going to make us excited, right? When Nongshim finally figures out how to use their amazing players, like all these sorts of things, that's when the LCK is really going to get spicy.
You know what? Pyosik is just the most win more jungler I can think of.
Oh, he always
actually,
has
like,
been. Yeah.
it's seeing him again. Like his solo lanes are doing well, and all of a sudden it's obviously easier, but he actually looks better. Like how he plays, the confidence that he has, how he moves around the map, it is all actually better.
Pyosik plays a rhythm game called League of Legends.
Yeah.
You know? And if he loses the beat, you know, if he
It's
can't,
just like,
if he's on the run in Guitar Hero, you know, he's trying to play it, and then like if he loses, he's like, nah.
He's like, escape, retry. Escape, retry. There's no retry button. He's like, no.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true, and I think that he does look like he knows where to be when things haven't fallen down.
Then he looks great.
Yeah, and let's just hope that, you know, when DRX are put in a position where they are challenged, when things do kind of fall off the rails, that's when we need to see the best out of Pyosik.
Hanwha Life and Kwangdong are really gonna bring that.
That's why
Guess
we're
what?
gonna look okay moving into
Udir's coming back, by the way, so
Udir's super busted.
He's
Please
gonna
pick
be playing Udir soon.
He's really,
I
really
was
good.
mentioning
I don't know if he's
yesterday.
gonna play it against Hama Life and Kwangdong Freaks. He might save it, but if he doesn't play it next week, then I think someone else will. Even though he's like the Udir guy, I
The
think
only way to clear
Udir's
vision
coming back.
in this meta, too, like, Udyr can clear that so fast. I mean, this is another topic for another time, but Udyr is coming back. I'm excited
He's coming
for it.
back for sure.
Yep, I'm a little bit worried. What I definitely need though is for more like Nidalee's jumping over like the like Peanut and Pyosik moment where it's like Udyr runs around the dragon pit to try and get the Nidalee and she hops over again. He runs back. Oh my god, I'm so ready.
Maybe
I'm
Nidalee
so
could come
ready.
back too with
I was
healing,
thinking
sustain,
about
and
it,
poke.
yeah.
But
I mean,
I
with
don't know. I
we
feel like the aggressive part of her game kind of loses a lot of power. So
we do
I'm
have
not
some
sure.
poke comps making their way back. That
maybe.
we have seen. I think I saw a
But
draft. It was in LCS last night for us.
Sorry to hear that.
There
You
was
saw
a
that.
seal. There was a CLG composition that had a Nidalee
It had
involved.
Seraphine as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that CLG TSM, I heard a lot about that
It
series.
was
I
a
didn't
very
watch it,
interesting series, but there was a Nidalee involved, so it's relevant.
Series?
Game.
That's what a series looks like
that's
in
what
LCS.
Yeah, sorry,
The BO1 series.
It was a
for
it was a
one.
BO1 series indeed. It was a BO1 series of just one game. That's exactly right. But I think it's time to get into some predictions of week 2, because week 2 is a different week to week 1 in a lot of different ways.
True. It's a
because
different number.
It is. It's week 2 instead of week 1.
Double.
But also, it felt like week 1 was relatively easy to predict, even though, just to go back and have a look, I've got 2
Don't.
predictions wrong. Valdes, you're not doing so well with
Yeah,
3 wrong. Wolf's 1 wrong.
Wani's
And,
perfect so
yeah,
far.
Chronicler is just absolutely nailing it. Wolf's 2 wrong, sorry, because of the...
Until
the
today
Fred
when
Brewer.
Live Sandbox beat Dom1.
Well, I mean,
But we'll all be
if
wrong.
Live Sandbox beats Dom1, then like that's going to be Chronicler's favorite type of wrong.
Yeah, I
He
don't mind
wants
that.
to be wrong there. But yeah, so you know we're not perfect with our predictions for last week, but let's start with day 1. This is Genji versus Dalmonk here, which is a big one, which I think we might want a little bit more, I guess, information for that we're not necessarily given.
The dumb one,
based
yeah.
on the Dom1 Live
I think
Sandbox
we could
series.
still we could still predict based on what we know now. And
Yeah,
be
we
wrong,
will
'cause
do that.
Yeah.
And then it's Fred Brown versus KT, which I think is a little bit less information needed. But I went with Genji and KT in today's games. Does anyone have any changes?
No, that's me too. I voted that way.
That's
as well.
me. Yeah.
Same.
All right. So day 1, done and dusted.
I think we should mention why. I think that the weakest part of Gen G is definitely Doran, but also Damwon Kia had Nuguri looking and it's the least impactful lane, so I think Gen G looked cleaner overall.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say why I picked that, because I think we all agree, but some people might be like, what? Like, Damwon's the better team, though.
I think mid lane and AD carry get the most focus and matter the most at the moment, and I think Gen G just looked much better. And I think the meta favors them a lot more right now, kind of along the lines of what I was saying about Chovy earlier.
Yeah, form for Gen G just I think it's just form looks better. I can see Damwon beat them later in the split, but I don't really know how Showmaker fits into the current meta yet. And him not performing is like, if he really performs well, that's the only way they match. I don't think that's going to happen this early on. So
yeah, Chovy versus
form thing.
Showmaker has always been an interesting matchup, but I agree. I think that even without seeing half of what Damwon has done this week, what we've seen from Gen G shows that I think that they're a head or a shoulder above what we've seen from Damwon Kia. Let's go to the next one, though. Kwangdong Freaks versus Nongshim.
That's like the hard one.
You get a coin out for that. And
tough.
then T1 versus Live Sandbox. So I think it's a pretty cut and dry day on day 2 as well. What do you guys reckon?
no, first one's a flip.
The first
I mean,
one
it's a
is
flip, but it doesn't really
really
matter.
hard. I actually need to submit my official predictions for what's going to happen on pre-show. So, like, whatever I say now, like, I'll have to remember when I actually send that in, because it's that flippy for me. But
I think it's Nongshim. I think Nongshim's
I
going
think
to
it's
the
Nongshim too.
bounce
I think
back?
Kwangdong
Nah,
I think
me
the
too.
bounce back, I think Kwangdong just looked so flat, and
Yeah,
it
I
seems
agree.
like they have no understanding of what the meta or the macro or how you're supposed to play right now is. And I think Nongshim, even though T1 was kind of fooling around and taking it easy on their first week back, I think Nongshim, I think they'll at least try to bounce back from
Yeah.
what was a pretty humiliating loss. And
Nongshim
they looked better.
has 5 players, and I think Kwangdong generally has 3, sometimes 4 if Nautilus is locked in.
2.5.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's I can see Nongshim, if they still look completely clueless cohesively, lose, but I Nongshim's got to start winning, and I think it'll start there.
Kwangdong's the KDF stands for Kwangdong Fate, and that's the only player they have.
well, at least it's not Kwangdong failure just yet, because we're not out of...
Not yet.
Not into the second week just yet, and they might have an opportunity to bounce back. But yeah, I think that I honestly would just flip a coin. I said Kwangdong Freaks because their game 1 against Hangul Life actually looked kind of
it's a flip.
salvageable.
Yeah.
But Nongshim just looked depressed across the board, and it's just sad. T1 will beat Live Sandbox.
Yeah, it could be a game stolen there, but I think
I think
T1
if Liv
wins that.
Sandbox beat Damwon Kia, they might be able to take a game.
Maybe.
Maybe. Just
I
because
think-
T1 is still in MSI Hangover. But
Yeah,
T1 is the obvious
I also
choice.
think Live Sandbox is like a knockoff version of RNG in many ways. I don't think a macro is
Same
even
colours.
remotely comparable. But
guess so.
you know that I assume Closer can play Galio as well, and we've seen Prince
don't
be a
wanna
great
see Galio.
Kaiser. So you know what? Maybe Sandbox gets a win, but T1 should outmatch across the board. So 2-1 at best, I'd argue.
And then, oh man, day
Well,
3
we can
is
skip day
Day
3,
three.
right?
Can we
All right,
skip
day
day
4.
Yeah, skip day
Yeah,
3.
okay.
Day 4.
So Drex and Genji win against Hangul Life Esports.
2-0,
incredibly.
2-0.
I think that's
setting records for fastest day, maybe.
I
Hopefully.
very much hope so. Anyway, let's get it. Oh, day 4 is this is the spicy one. I've actually got a question mark here. I don't know, and I actually kind of refuse to predict Damwon Kia versus T1
'Cause you need more
before we
info.
see the games tonight,
Yeah.
because it's the telecom war and then Damwon versus Live
Yeah,
Sandbox.
there's just not enough info.
And I think that we will get a lot of info based on the Damwon T1 matchup.
I'm leaning towards, based on what we saw alone, Damwon, but it's really just, it's hard to actually predict it in good conscience, because we've only seen 2 games from both of them, and they both looked below their normal form, so it's very weird.
I think as long as T1 play anything like they have in the last season, like if they like recover from the hangover through Live Sandbox, I think it should be a 2-0 T1. I think I would still favor them pretty heavily in that
Yeah.
matchup. I think Damwon are not ready yet. I think they still need time.
I predict T1 winning, but there's also, if you're the T1 coaching staff, I think the first month of spring, or of summer rather, you're like, guys,
Go to the beach.
go to the
Yeah.
take it easy. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, the guys have been through a lot of, like, every team always, Damwon last year did exactly the same. Talked so much about how heavy it is and like how the schedule is just really tough. I'd expect T1 to not mess around as much, and I think overall the team should still be stronger. If Damwon win, even if Damwon 2-0, then all these Damwon Genji DK matches are really fun to see who's strong now. But I don't think it says that much. It's a really fun match. It's gonna be really entertaining. I hope it's a free gamer, which I think it reasonably could be, with T1's messiness and Damwon's general, like, I think, kind of probing. So it should be good.
It will be a great series.
Yeah.
I can predict that.
Yeah.
And I think the next game is almost more difficult to predict. Live Sandbox versus KT. I kind of... And then these are another two teams that we haven't seen all of their games. But based on just the one that we've seen, I'm thinking Live Sandbox, hands down.
I'm on the Live Sandbox hype train. I think right now with how little top lane matters and Rascal playing Sejuani and, I'm not sure.
Rascal being outspoken, saying tanks are good.
Yeah,
makes me
that's
very
just
worried.
a bad sign. Like, I don't think that's good for KT at all.
No,
and
very
I think
good
that
take.
Live Sandbox, I think they're going to 2-0 them.
Yep. And the final day of predictions, Hammer Life Esports versus Nongshim Red Force. This one I'm actually giving to Nongshim.
Same.
And then DRX versus Kwangdong Freaks.
Yeah,
which I think is a non-issue. DRX
No, that's
all the
definitely...
way,
DRX
baby.
definitely lose that one. Are you kidding me? It's DRX.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the kind of perfect way to do it.
I'm not gonna predict that, though.
I might predict a Kwangdong win just because it's just perfect. Kwangdong
But it was
randomly
Hanwha that ruined their streak last time, so and
Kwangdong-
that's happening previous. in the
Kwangdong
in the
randomly picks up like 2 Nautilus games in a row, and then they look really good. Like it could also just be a DRX 2-0, but it would, to me, that's the one where I'm like, I don't know. That's the Fiesta pick of the week, where
And we
reasonably DRX should win.
Yeah, we are also moving into a new patch next week as well, which
Sorry.
is pretty cool.
Sorry.
So we'll just have to see what some of the changes are actually going to mean. Hopefully it speeds things up a little bit, but I'm not holding my breath because I could just die.
45 minutes.
Yeah, maybe it slows things down even more. But I think we're actually pretty aligned when it comes to a lot of these picks. I probably... If you ask me to snap pick a victor between Damwon and T1 and really ring my arm, I'd probably say Damwon.
Same.
Just based on the fact that I think Damwon are probably more hungry and T1 are in a position where they're wanting to take a bit of a break, and I think the mindset is going to be a little bit different, but I think it's almost impossible to tell, and I think that there is a chance that T1 are just better hands on the day.
Yeah, I also think that T1 not having a traditional coaching staff, like, yes, getting rid of Danny and moving things along is what brought T1 back to the forefront in some ways, but that was in a time where I think T1's biggest weakness was they weren't being decisive in terms of what they were doing, but they had a really strong coaching staff and strong strategist in Danny. Now it's kind of like you've got Holt and Moment, and then Faker is actually really coaching this team. I think T1 in metas like this and in evolutions that are happening where the meta is completely changed, like T1 will struggle in the first few weeks because they don't have the same coaching staff as a lot of the top teams have. Like Damwon have a much more strong, rigid coaching staff that's been working with the team for a really long time. So improvements, I think, will happen slower for T1 because they don't have that same sort of infrastructure they used to have in terms of Danny, basically, in the back, and Coach Kim they had in the past, Coma, etc. So that's another reason why I'm kind of leaning towards, like, things have changed up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit slower for T1, kind of leaning towards Damwon.
Honestly, the biggest loser of looking at the schedule of the week is going to be me, because I'm going to be casting both Hanwha Live games, and I don't expect that to be. I don't because I really would love to see Kara's win, but I don't see it happening next week, and then I'm just sitting there being sad.
But you get both
games.
DRX games, so that's cool.
But if you get the Hanwha Live game, then you get Nongshim finally winning.
That's true.
Isn't that beautiful?
That will mend my heart a little bit.
Or Hama Life winning.
Well, I mean, Nongshim may have already won a game, but
We'll see.
I think that one they should definitely win. But yeah, Hanwha are not.
Seems
looking-
likely. Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking pretty dicey. But I think that the fact that Hanwha Life Esports and Fredit Brion are actually losing is good.
It is.
In a weird way, right?
It
And
is.
I don't mean any shade if you are a Hanwha Life fan. I was right there with you, when it was Chovy
year,
and Deft.
yeah.
It was a very different team. I was right there with you. Fred at Breon, also the Best Friends Club, looked really. They were so lovable in the spring season, but them not winning with the players that they have
In this
is a
meta.
good thing for us, because actually teams playing towards the sum of their parts more, playing towards what we know that they're capable of more, is what we want for the LCK, especially moving into a world championship where we're sending multiple teams, right? Like that's absolutely what we want. We want a stronger region, and we want a realization of power. And I think that we're starting to get that a little bit.
Our depth was great last year. We just didn't win. I got three teams to semis. If only Gen.G could have done it.
No, but
Still not over it.
I'm not even talking about like last
No,
year.
I know,
I'm
I
talking
know.
about like spring was a mess.
Yep.
And this is a time where Fred at Breon makes playoffs. And when Fred at Breon are making playoffs, that's when you know there's been some turmoil. There's been some issues.
Live Sandbox to Worlds, anyone?
Don't do that to me, Valdes.
They've had one match.
Little do they know. Little
Live
do they know.
Sandbox to
Live
Worlds.
Sandbox literally just beat
Yeah.
Damwon Kia,
Watch-
a
yeah,
few
watch-
days before you guys are watching this.
Watch this
Watch
actually come
like
true.
Damwon Kia and T1 like in the most upsetting turn of events somehow both bomb out, and we send like Gen.G, Live Sandbox, Kwangdong Freaks, and DRX.
What a time to be alive. And do you know what? I actually think that is the perfect note to end today's episode of the Pog State on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's so fun to be back. I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of our second season of the year. Summer is very, very warm. We've got the amazing Hawaiian shirts. We might bring them back out for the next episode in a couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, enjoy the LCK and stay classy. We'll see you soon.
That was a great end.
I actually thought that was perfect.
One liner goes to Wolf with his what was the line? If you pick Victor, you lose.